Hello, listeners. It's Gunter Swoboda here with some exciting news. We're on the lookout for sponsors to join us on our incredible journey with Inspired Change with Gunter. If your organization cares deeply about meaningful conversations around masculinity, self development, and mental health, we'd love to partner with you. Our podcast has a wonderful, dedicated audience committed to personal growth and positive social change. By sponsoring Inspired Change with Gunter, your brand will connect with listeners who truly value thoughtful discussion and support initiatives that promote real transformation. We're incredibly proud to be ranked number one in Australia and number 5 in the USA on FeedSpot's top men's mental health podcasts. For more information on how to become a sponsor, please reach out to Miranda Spiegner Sapon, our showrunner and executive producer. We'd love to explore how we can work together to inspire change. Now, thank you for your continued support, and let's keep inspiring change together.
You're listening to Inspire Change, a broadcast that strives to educate, motivate, and empower men to challenge traditions of masculinity. To guide us through the intricacies and intersections of emotions, relationships, and male identity is renowned psychologist, author, and speaker Gunter Swoboda. This is Inspire Change.
Before I begin the actual podcast, I would like to respectfully acknowledge the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, who are the traditional custodians of the land on which I work. I would also like to pay my respects to their elders past and present. Welcome everybody to another episode of Inspired Change with Gunter. I'm your host. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Inspired Change. Yes, I'm back from my R&R and feeling pretty good about having had the break and spending some really good quality time with family. So, as we've talked about, this is a podcast that takes a really hard look at the structures that shape our lives and then ask what needs to change and how do we do it without losing our humanity. I'm your host, Gunter Swoboda. I'm a psychologist, author, speaker, and the founder of Making Good Men Great. So what do I want to pick up in today's podcast? Well, my wife sent me an article that I suddenly had the urge to put out there on the podcast to be discussed, because I believe it is central to some of the stuff that's going on at the moment. And the question that it poses, and that isn't necessarily asked enough, is journalism itself part of the crisis we blame on social media? We spend so much time criticising the algorithms, the influencers, and the fake news peddlers. And yes, they certainly deserve scrutiny. People like Joe Rogan, Jordan Peterson, but many, many more. Even people that are much more benign or even highly educated. But the reality is that there's a much older institution that plays a central role in shaping our information landscape: journalism. And unlike social media, journalism still claims to hold itself to a higher standard. But the question is, does it? And this is what I want to dig into in today's podcast. So recently, the Sydney Morning Herald published a piece titled "Good Journalism Reveals Problems and Just Asks More Questions." Now, on the surface, this seems like a noble statement of purpose, that journalism isn't about neat solutions or propaganda, but about uncovering the complexity of the world. Real journalism, it argues, creates discomfort. It leaves us unsettled, curious, and provoked. But that raises a deeper issue. When journalism only asks questions, Who takes responsibility for the consequences of what it reveals? And how does that model of journalism handle its own complicity in framing, omission, and agenda setting? If all it does is reveal, does it ever self-reflect? Now, in our landscape, we certainly have some very divergent journalistic positions. Foxtel, MSNBC. So I could name a few more, but I won't do that. So I want to basically speak frankly here. For years now, we've scapegoated social media for the erosion of public trust. And to be clear, those platforms seriously deserve that hard critique. But journalism, particularly legacy journalism, has hidden behind the illusion of objectivity while making editorial decisions that are anything but neutral. Again, let's look at Murdoch Press and so on. Take headlines designed to provoke outrage, or the subtle slant in story selection, or worse, the commodification of trauma, when journalists swarm a tragedy not to bring clarity, but to outcompete rivals for traffic. Media companies like Nine Entertainment, who now own the Sydney Morning Herald, are commercial giants. Their loyalty isn't to truth, it's to shareholders. What sells? What makes profit? That means journalists are often under pressure to feed the content machine. Clicks, engagement, outrage cycles, all that sound familiar? Well, that's not just a social media problem. It's a journalism problem too. Now, I want to be fair. There are many outstanding journalists in this country and globally. Kate McClymont is one. Her investigations into corruption and organised crime have had lasting impacts. Michael West is another. His deep dives into tax avoidance by major corporations have brought scrutiny where it matters most. These are examples of journalism fulfilling its highest calling, spreading truth to power. But over time, certainly over the last 20 to 25 years, my sense is that these stories have become rare. They take time, resources, courage. The Wall Street Journal is an example in which that's taken place. The New York Times, The Atlantic in the United States. And they're often buried beneath layers of lifestyle pieces, celebrity scandal, and sports clickbait. So we've left with a tension. The institution can still do great work. But structurally, it is not incentivized to do so. Journalism has been hollowed out by decades of cost-cutting and commercialisation. Investigative reporting is expensive. Questioning one's editorial bias, even more so. And many right-wing and ultra-right-wing politicians like Trump, Farage and so on have thrown another spanner in the works. And that is turning the spotlight on the media as the enemy within. So we've got a real problem in our culture for all of us who are exposed and who, partake in the banquet of information that's being disseminated into our cultural network. Who do we believe? What is the truth? The term fake news, which is in some respects relatively new, at least on a common day-to-day basis, has just exploded and wrapped up in QAnon conspiracy theories, Russian and Chinese propaganda and influencing. We're seriously in trouble, because where do we find the sources of solid reporting? Not necessarily finding the truth. It's a bit like, expecting science to be able to explain everything. It's not going to happen. It probably will never happen. We make good inroads. We have hypotheses. We collect the data. We test it, and we come to some sort of, not conclusion, but better questions in that sense. But even science has been, thrown into the rubbish bin as, you can't trust them. So we have crises like, the questioning of vaccines. Now, I'm not saying we shouldn't question vaccines, but I'm saying that I've got a problem with how it's done. And so the idea, like, Robert Kennedy and his ilk in just making outlandish and unsupported statements about science, about research, that then is published in the media, is, again, another layer in the shitstorm that exists in the information landscape. However, it's not all bad news. There is another way forward, and this is what the article draws out. It's called constructive journalism. Now, constructive journalism doesn't abandon hard questions. It doesn't sugarcoat injustice, but it expands the frame. It asks, who is doing something about this? What solutions are emerging? What agency do people still have around the topic? The danger with journalism that only exposes is that it risks disempowering us. We start to believe the world is only broken. And that's where cynicism seeps in. Cynicism is disempowering. Constructive journalism, or solutions journalism, pushes back. It tells stories of resistance, reform, healing, and in doing so, it invites us not just to observe, but to participate. One can never just be an observer anyway. The observer, in fact, influences the outcome. This doesn't mean glossing over problems. It means contextualizing them with complexity and with hope. Right? So simplistic explanations are put through the grinder. So from the point of view where I talk about making good men great as a foundational movement towards change, the deconstruction of patriarchy, the movement towards relational ethics, to work on our connections as human beings within the fabric of our collective culture. That's what's really at stake here. So what happens if we turn the lens back on journalism itself? What would it mean to demand more transparency from editorial boards? To expect accountability not only when a journalist is caught fabricating, but when a paper slants stories repeatedly in line with its owner's economic interests? What if we held newspapers to the same standards of algorithmic transparency we demand of Facebook? Which we don't actually really get, but we at least pretend to do so. And what if we, the reader, stopped accepting low-effort journalism as inevitable? So think about it. If we go from the personal to the political, we by inherently taking that step, are activists. Doesn't matter where in the scale, activism is an integral part of the political process. It just depends on where you're directing your activism. The idea that, for example, that's being floated in Australia at the moment, that we should abandon net zero, the little bugbear for the ultra-right in our political scene, needs to come under scrutiny. It's a poke in the side of rationality. We have a planet that is being destroyed through the processes of the Industrial Revolution. And as my wife puts it, the Industrial Revolution is killing the planet, and the tech bros and the whole digital space is undoing society. It's killing us as human beings. And as much as she sounds dramatic, I actually hold her to be absolutely on point. We have this problem. If we are now going to turn the ship around, and for some of us who are both, personally into growth but also socially active, that ship's already sailed. So I'm going to reach out, and here's the invitation. Next time you read the news, ask yourself, what story is being told? More importantly, what story is being left out? And who benefits from that omission? We cannot build a more ethical media environment if we don't include journalism itself in our critique. And we certainly can't fix democracy if we treat the press as above reproach. So, think about it. Go from the personal to the political. Become active. And I speak particularly to you men in the audience. Don't buy the media bullshit about alpha males, about, if you show these characteristics, then you're going to be this and you're going to be a chick magnet, all that sort of stuff, and how to reach the pinnacles of wealth through, being like a wolf that ravages the environment. That's rubbish. We know from ecological research that wolves are collectivists. They believe and operate within a family pack. And I say the word believe very clearly. I watch dogs, and they're a lot smarter than what we often give them credit for. So wolves, whose intelligence and intuitions are shaped by the natural environment, are a step above the pack. But they don't do it from a competitive basis within themselves. They take care of each other. If one of them's wounded, the pack looks after them. We don't throw them out. And that is, corporations have run on this idea of natural selection and so on for years, probably since the early 20th century. And it's gotten worse and worse and worse, and neoliberalism's taken it to another level, right? Ayn Rand and her immoral philosophy has reinforced that idea. It's a nonsense, and you'll hear me talk about this a lot more. So we as men need to take the step to begin to reflect, to deconstruct patriarchy, and to put the spotlight on the issues that count and not get caught up with clickbait and deceptions. We can watch, Trump do all the sleight of hand we want, but we know the bullshit that rests behind that. So let me thank you for listening to Inspire Change, and I hope you find this thought-provoking, challenging, and please join the community. If this episode stirred something in you, share it, start a conversation, ask better questions, educate yourself. Again, sometimes it might mean getting off the computer and actually reading a book, or it might be turning off the TV because you've been watching Married at First Sight till it's coming out of your ears. These things are Valium for the masses. So until next time, I'm Gunter Swoboda. Stay awake, stay human, and stay engaged. And keep inspiring.
Hello to all our listeners. This week's gratitude goes out to those of you listening in France, as your country has returned to the top 10. Congratulations at landing at number 8 on the top 10 global listeners list. We thank you for tuning in and promoting positive social change. This makes you a part of Gunter's efforts in transforming not only men's lives, but lives in general, and we are grateful you have joined us. I, Devonna Prinzi, the co-executive producer, and our showrunner, Miranda Spigner-Sapone, sincerely thank you and ask that you please take the time to like, follow, subscribe, and share, as your efforts make a difference to everyone here at Inspire Change with Gunter. Please remember, if you want to share your story of social change, feel free to reach out to the show directly. Please see the show notes for our contact information. And as always, keep inspiring positive social change.
Love to hear from you. And if you're interested, please check out my work on www.gunterswoboda.com or www.goodmengreat.com.
Thank you for listening to Inspire Change, a broadcast that strives to educate, motivate, and empower men to challenge traditions of masculinity. For more information on the Making Good Men Great movement, or for individual or group coaching sessions with Gunter, visit goodmengreat.com.